Good morning, everyone. We continue with our series on Jehovah Shalom, the Lord is peace. The theme today is Have you taken the altar challenge? We're about to find out what all this is about. We flash back into Gideon's story of him hiding in the wine press, scared for his life, full of doubt, fear, lost his peace, when the Lord appears to him and says, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." And he says, "Peace, do not be afraid. You will not die." At this point, you would think, considering the Lord Himself appeared to Gideon, he should have no doubt or no fear. But in reality, Gideon had more questions and answers. You can't blame him. He was the weakest link in the family, from the lowest tribe, with a raging enemy at his doorstep. You know, we can all relate to this, right? We often doubt in spite of God's bigness and faithfulness, which we have experienced and witnessed in our lives. But remember, God is not hard on us when we doubt. He remembers that we are just flesh. You know, a doubting Thomas, God allowed to come and touch his wounds so that he could become a missionary hero. Recently, a group of friends, we had the opportunity to stand before the altar where Thomas gave his life to bring the gospel to our country. So, what did Gideon do in this situation? He is full of doubt and fear, but he does something wonderful. He builds an altar, gives thanks to God, offers his thanks to God, and God is pleased with this. This is not to say his doubts just disappeared, and in fact, he asked God to show him signs for him to believe. But something beautiful happens when, in this situation of doubt and fear, Gideon began to give thanks. He received something from God. He received God's peace. And that is why the place where this incident happened, Oprah, he names the altar Jehovah Shalom, the Lord is peace. And this is the first time we are introduced to the word Shalom. And I love the way how the Old Testament and the New Testament kind of link with each other. You must have been familiar with this verse from Philippians 4, verse 8, where it says, "May the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, rule your hearts and minds." But we often read verses kind of not connecting them with the verses before them. When you read verse 6 and 7, what it says is, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything with prayer and supplication." And note this, "with thanksgiving in your heart, make your requests known to God." And then it says, "And then the peace of God that passeth all understanding," and it goes on. It is like, if you have to receive peace of God in an anxious situation, when your doubts and fears are plaguing you, you need to give thanks. And that is the prerequisite for peace. So, doubt itself is not a bad thing, but if you let the seed of doubt take root, that is when we lose our peace, because Satan is ready and waiting to take hold of us. Um, you know, in the Bible, this practice of building altars to give thanks was a very common thing. And you see it not only during a time of plenty or harvest, or as a celebration, it is also done at times when there is no reason to celebrate, an altar of thanksgiving. Let us look at a couple of them. When Noah came out of the ark, you remember it had been raining and pouring and floods, and when he came out, everything that he had known was wiped out the face of the earth. There was no human beings, there's no animals, there's no plant life. But yet, the first thing that Noah did was build an altar and give thanks to God, because he thanked God for what he had. He had his family intact and all the animals in the ark. The same way, every time God yanked Abram out of his comfort zone, uprooted him, and moved him out. Remember, Abraham was a wealthy guy. He was an established businessman, had all his life. So God would just just suddenly just pull him out and direct him to go to a distant foreign land. And what is the first thing Abraham did? I would have just, in fact, I did. Every time God moved me, I murmured. I was so ungrateful. But what did Abraham do? He built an altar and gave thanks to God and acknowledged of his faithfulness. Folks, we need to get into this practice of building an altar of thanks in all situations, giving thanks in all situations. That's what Philippians 4 says. Give thanks in all situations. This needs to become a practice which becomes a habit. And how do we do that? In those days, they built a physical altar to give thanks. And a physical altar is kind of a good reminder that we need to give thanks. And how do we build a physical altar? So we remember to give thanks. For me, the physical altar became my journal. Every time I had doubt, I started murmuring, I lost my peace, I started doing, writing down all the things I was thankful for, even in situations that are not going in our way, because it says give thanks in all situations. And then I realized as I did that, I started counting my blessings. And when you start counting your blessings, you also become aware of God's faithfulness and goodness, not just through our generation, through all generations. You realize and you see very clearly a God who never changes. Note this: peace is not dependent on our circumstances changing, but dependent on a God who never changes. I repeat, peace is not dependent on our circumstances changing, but dependent on a God who never changes. Recently in the internet, this craze about taking challenges went on. And they would post these videos, like this ice bucket challenge was one. And also, you saw celebrities taking on this challenge, like Bill Gates and so on. One of the most popular ones was the Bird Box Challenge, which was inspired by the Sandra Bullock movie, Bird Box, and where people blindfolded themselves and went about doing their daily chores. Some of the different challenges that came up during these times were quite fatal and even life threatening. Today, the challenge that we are asking you to take on, the altar challenge, is a life giving one. It will transform your life in a very different way. You know, can we be inspired by Gideon's altar of giving thanks, where he took all his doubt and anxiousness and brought everything to God? And when he gave thanks, he received God's peace. Today, let us take on the altar challenge of habitually giving thanks, because this will alter your life in a profound way. Because He is Jehovah Shalom, He is our peace. God bless you.